Good morning, everyone. Your morning weather briefing for this Monday, June 4th finds that there are no major changes in the forecast versus what I presented yesterday afternoon. With regards to details of the temperature and rainfall forecast this morning, still plenty of warmth in the 2 week forecast for a big portion of the nation, but especially as you get into central and western portions of the Corn Belt, the Plain States, and areas to the west of there. With regards to rainfall forecasts, I think you have to notice that my rainfall forecasts today are not as wet as they were yesterday. I think that the models today in general are less enthused about the overall rainfall prospects for the next 2 weeks, but I'm not getting real concerned about that right now. It may just be a situation where there is typical model variability in a pattern that is very difficult for the models to discern with regards to details, and we also have to keep in mind that the bulk of the rainfall is not going to be starting until several days from now. Something to watch, but for right now, just noting that the models today in general a little bit less enthused, but I think that overall there's still quite a bit of rainfall in the 2 week forecast. With regards to the QPF discussion this morning for the 1 to 5 day time frame, I do not have any disagreements versus what is shown. Like yesterday, this is heavily weighted towards the GFS ensemble and to some degree the GFS operational model. I don't have any problem with that. I don't think that this is a perfect forecast by any means, but is certainly no better than anything that I could draw. It's likely going to be changing a lot in the days ahead, given that most of the range shown is in the second half of the period in question. For the day 6 to 7 time frame, again, the GFS operational, GFS ensemble is the best match to what is shown by this map. I don't have any problem with that, but again, I think we have to expect that the details of this map will change quite a bit in the days ahead. High temperatures yesterday, pretty pleasant day across the bulk of the Corn Belt. These are above normal readings for this time of year, but certainly nothing stressful for crops with highs in the 70s and low 80s with a lot of low humidity across the region as well. With regards to 18-hour rainfall totals, with that low humidity yesterday, saw a lot of clear skies and thus a lack of rainfall all across the middle of the country since yesterday morning. Looking at radar estimated rainfall for the past 3 days, kind of went over this in the video that I released yesterday afternoon. Your biggest rains during the weekend period, clearly in the eastern portion of Nebraska and into southwestern Iowa, where there were a lot of 1+ inch rainfall amounts. Rainfall is certainly lacking over the weekend for large portions of Illinois, eastward into sections of northern Indiana and northwestern Ohio. If we were to look at the areas that would really appreciate the rainfall the most right now, probably would be northeastern sections of Missouri into southeastern Iowa and nearby areas of Illinois. Another pocket there in central northeastern Indiana and into adjoining areas of Ohio. Those would probably be the areas that really would need the rainfall the most right now. I don't think that anyone in the Corn Belt is in dire need of rainfall at this point, but again, those are the two circled areas that I think that would most appreciate the rains that I do have in the forecast, starting especially for the second half of this week and beyond. Looking at the early morning radar this morning, again, high pressure dominating a lot of the Corn Belt right now, so really dry conditions across a lot of the Corn Belt. Some light to spotty moderate rain in portions of Kansas this morning. Your bigger thunderstorms this morning, obviously, in central sections of Texas. Looking at the rainfall forecast through midday on Wednesday, not a lot of rain going to be falling in that period in the bulk of the Corn Belt. We will be seeing some scattered areas of mainly light to moderate rains, maybe just an isolated spot seeing a significant rain in far northeastern and far eastern portions of the Corn Belt. That would be for later on tonight and into a portion of tomorrow. Another area of rainfall that could be seen would be in the far northwestern Corn Belt and into the northern plains. That would be for especially late tomorrow through a early portion of Wednesday. But other than that, the period from now through about midday on Wednesday is going to be largely dry across all of the Corn Belt region. It is after that that we will be seeing the ring of fire activity starting to get more active in the Corn Belt for very late in the day on Wednesday through at least the end of this work week period, or quite possibly even longer than that. Looking at surface features as of 1 o'clock in the morning on Thursday, you can see that the European operational model, the GFS operational model, there's the European ensemble, Canadian model, all indicating what would be ring of fire activity at that time. 7 o'clock in the morning on Friday, models show some differences on the details, but all are indicating another ring of fire event occurring at that time, a rainfall occurring on the northeastern side of all of the heat that is going to be seen in the southern portion of the plain states. 7 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, again, all the models still suggesting some rainfall activity at that time in at least a portion of the Corn Belt. Doesn't look like much on the models if you believe their rainfall forecast details exactly, but in situations like this, the models in general tend to underplay the type of rainfall activity that can be seen. As we get towards 7 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday, might actually see a little bit of drying in the Corn Belt at that time. You can notice that a frontal system by that time is largely driven south of the region, thus entering in some cooler and probably drier air into the Corn Belt at that time. So maybe we would see a brief period of some drying as we head towards about Sunday, Monday of next week. But given that the overall pattern is not cool and we would probably see warming taking place again after this time frame, I would think that as we get towards the latter portion of the 6 to 10 day and especially into the 11 to 15 day period, that we would see additional ring of fire activity during that time frame. These are 11 to 15 day rainfall forecasts from the various models. GFS operational in the upper left, GFS ensemble top, middle, Canadian ensemble, and the European ensemble, all of them suggesting that we are looking at far from a dry pattern in the 11 to 15 day time frame. Obviously, the GFS operational would be the wettest. Hard to put any faith in that model in the 11 to 15 day time frame, as is almost always the case. But just want to emphasize that even in the 11 to 15 day time frame, probably more ring of fire activity even at that time. Certainly not a dry weather pattern indicated for the Corn Belt through the end of the 2-week time frame. High temperature forecast for tomorrow, still going to be relatively pleasant across the Corn Belt for today, but temperatures heating up again as we get work towards tomorrow. You can see that sections of the western and southwestern Corn Belt going to again see highs above the 90-degree mark for tomorrow. As we get towards Friday, a more extensive area of 90 or even 95 plus degree heat in the southern Corn Belt and areas to the south and southwest of there. You can see quite a temperature contrast setting up that day. Note the highs just in the 70s on Saturday in the northern portions of the Corn Belt. A battle zone in between those two air masses would probably be the focal area of what would probably be some significant rainfall activity during the day on Saturday. Longer term, looking at 500 millibars as we head towards the latter portion of the 11 to 15 day time frame. In fact, these would be the maps for the final day of the 11 to 15 day period. Nothing real notable there. Any real normally high heights, really any abnormal ridging on the maps at that time in far western, northwestern portions of the nation. Maybe some semblance of a trough further east, but in general, this is certainly not a cool weather pattern, but certainly not indicating anything in the way of extreme abnormal heat either. The overall jet stream, the main storm track, tending to be rather close to the Corn Belt, especially in northern portions of the Corn Belt. So again, I don't think that would be an especially dry weather pattern for late in the 11 to 15 day period either. Internationally this morning, obviously the dry season taking firm control in northern Safrina corn areas of Brazil. Further south, rains are going to be falling the next 2 weeks in Paraná and southern Mato Grosso do Sul, although you can see that the real big rains falling just in far southern portions of Paraná. 15-day rainfall forecast in Europe. Big rains going to be seen over the next 2 weeks in southern portion of Europe, Scandinavia, and then of course the wintergreen areas of the former Soviet Union. Looking at below normal rainfall during the next 2 weeks for those wintergreen areas of the former Soviet Union. Could be a situation that rainfall for both week 1 and week 2 is no more than quarter to 3/4 of an inch, with the bulk of the areas probably seeing rainfall amounts towards the lower end of that range. 10-day rainfall forecast for spring grain areas of the former Soviet Union. You can see that especially western portions of that region looking at some big rainfall amounts during the next 10 days. They will be seeing some nice warming for the next 3 to 4 days, probably the warmest temperatures that they have seen so far, but this is not the start of a warm pattern overall for the spring grain areas. Note that already by the time we get to Friday, big cold air once again plunging into the area, and we probably will be be seeing abnormally cool conditions returning for all of the spring wheat areas starting on Friday and probably continuing for the rest of the 2 week forecast. In China, going to be seeing some welcome rains in Manchuria during the next 2 weeks. Look for that to especially be the case for the 1 to 5 and 11 to 15 day periods. Combining that together, it looks like normal rainfall there during the next 2 weeks. Subnormal rainfall amounts for the North China Plain, most of that rainfall occurring there in the 6 to 10 and 11 to 15 day periods. For Canada, not an especially wet forecast for the Canadian prairies for the next 10 days. The bulk of the rainfall that is seen going to be favoring northern and eastern portions of the growing area, with especially dry conditions in southwestern Saskatchewan into southeastern Alberta. Quite a bit of warmth coming up for the end of this week and into the first portion of next week, especially for Thursday through about Monday. You can see the high temperatures there for this coming Saturday running well above normal to the tune of 10 to 20 degrees above normal, especially for western portions of the Canadian prairies. Looking at Australia, near to slightly below normal rainfall there for the next 2 weeks. Western portions of Australia will be seeing their best rains in areas closer to the coast. A couple of decent rainfall events there, especially over the next week. You can see that the models are suggesting close to normal rainfall for eastern winter wheat areas of Australia. Note that most of that rainfall will be occurring during the second week of the 2 week time frame, so there is some measure of guarded optimism regarding that rainfall, given that it is in the second week of the 2 week forecast. So maybe a little bit redder rainfall outlook for Australia than what we've seen recently, but clearly what is needed for Australia is a lot bigger rains than this. So maybe a little bit better rains, but I think that an even wetter forecast than this is probably needed to really give them some relief from what has been an extremely dry 2 to 3 plus month period for Australian wheat areas. Finally, for this morning, looking at the Indian monsoon, some nice rains going to be seen for both the 1 to 5 and 6 to 10 day periods for a lot of the Indian growing areas before conditions really quiet down with regards to the Indian monsoon in the 11 to 15 day time frame. That's what I have for this morning. Everyone have themselves a great day.